Hey folks, Jacob Walton here, and welcome to episode 2 of our audio commentary tracks. And this time we're going to look at episode 2 of the Jigsaw Blogs. This episode's called JigsawRules.com is shut down. And one more fun fact before we actually start the video, I want to give a shout out to artist Luke Hedlund, who, if you notice in all the thumbnails that you see on my page, he actually does a really good job. He does a lot of horror poster arts and stuff like that. There's a link down below into the description if you want to contact him to help him make custom thumbnails for you. He did a terrific job. He's done all of our thumbnails for every one of our episodes that we've done so far of the series. So I just want to give him a good big shout out and tell him what a great job he's done. I can't thank him enough for all the artwork consideration he's done. And one of these artwork shots that you see right here in the episode, I think it's like probably one of the coolest ones. Like you see the spiral symbol on the computer, especially with them jigsaw eyes. Oh, it's just so well done. So now we get on to episode 2, and one of the things I'll touch base before we start watching the video is I'm going to go ahead and talk more about, the story details, what was going to happen at the time. Because as I mentioned right now, episode 20, part 2 is still not out as of yet. But hopefully I'm still working on the clock, still editing right here. But I'm going to give you all more feedback and more behind-the-scenes scoops of our stories. So, with having said that, let's start episode 2. Now, one of the things I noticed right here is the dates. Now, some people say that the Jigsaw movie, the 2017 Jigsaw movie, takes place in 2016. I went ahead and decided to make it, 2017, October 27th, 2017, because that's essentially the date when the Jigsaw movie came out. On the 27th of October of 2015, so I figured let's just put it in that year, especially Jigsaw movie came out in 2017. I mean, there's people that say, Jigsaw died 10 years ago during this time, and it been 2006. Some people says when John Kramer died, which would essentially put the Jigsaw movie in 2016, and I get the argument for that, but for the sake of my continuity for this show right here, I decided to make it in 2017 is when this timeline takes place. Episode 2 really takes place, literally a couple hours after episode 1, and of course episode 1 took place, I saw during the day, right there. Yep, I got my old iPad back at the time. I still had the iPad mini, because I remember back when I was a teacher in college, they literally forced students to go literally buy the iPads for your coursework, and of course this is 2010, 2011 at the time, and that's a huge buy, which, it seems comical now as we're in the 2025s, but back then it was But, back in the day, my character tells a story right here and about what happened in the events of, Jigsaw. So essentially he's telling you, okay, these are all the victims that the cops in Jigsaw movie found. Found Malcolm Neal and all the other victims that they found, especially the one that found in Eleanor's warehouse. So we talk about that there. And essentially my character, we kind of get to gravitate, where my character Jacob knows where the story takes place with Jigsaw. And as I'm listening right here, they said they found DNA evidence of John Kramer alive, and my character at the time, he just doesn't believe that Jigsaw's alive, and he just can't accept the fact that Jigsaw's alive, despite all this evidence saying that Jigsaw is alive, find DNA at the crime scene and all the works again. And by the way, I look back at this. Yes, I did take 2 ibuprofens, during a live take right here. I was like, oh boy. I figured, what can I do just to stall for time? And really, when I do this, I'm just thinking, what I'm going to say. If you want a good drinking game, this is just for future reference, take a drink every time I take a big sigh. Because literally, it's just the pet peeve of mine. I've had a little speech, grew up with a speech impediment, slightly with autism as well. But I still go on and ramble and take deep breaths and sighs. My wife tells me I'm a bad mumbler, so hopefully you all can understand me. But that's one of the things, I learned to just go through it, growing up, autistic and ADHD. But, it's just one of the cool things I do on the side, just, doing little things right here. And I don't let the struggles overcome me. I still find ways, not affect what I do and have fun with my work. And that's essentially what this is. I go on and just tell my stories right here and go on from this situation there. And listen, I'm telling the story, what you hear me talk about right here about me going to my classroom in Moscow. That's essentially what I did when I was a kid because, growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends in high school, unfortunately. I had some acquaintances here and there, but I was literally the son of a teacher, and my mom literally would go to school, and she would take me there, and all I would do is, some kids would go, like I say in the story right here, kids would go to the cafeteria and socialize or talk in the mornings. No, I was the type of kid that literally went to his mother's classroom and got on the computer and look up sports or wrestling and stuff like that. And that's essentially what I did growing up. So, but essentially what I did was, to make the acting strong, and I learned this as a writer. I say that I'm a writer, but I'm not. But just what you do is like the best characters like feel more authentic towards who you are, and that's essentially what I decided to do. Is like I said at the beginning of episode 1, the Jacob character is essentially me, just dialed up to a little bit 10. It's kind of like pro wrestling. It's like, they ask like pro wrestlers, okay, be your character, but dial yourself up a little bit more. And that's essentially what I did right here. And everything you hear me talk about, it's essentially true. Like, like going from there, that's how I'd be socialized and stuff like that. That's just how I grew up. But, and I talk about, why I like Saw and the Jigsaw, and like, why would someone like my character like gravitate towards like the Jigsaw world? And we talk about the Jigsaw Red forums. Essentially, it was like House of Jigsaw, and that's essentially what I was on all the time, and that's how I grew up on Saw, because I was a member of the House of Jigsaw fans. So if you're any House of Jigsaw people in the comments, just drop your username in the comments section below. My username was Saw Rules 8. It was Saw Rules 6 in Jigsaw time, House of Jigsaw time. It was Saw Rules 8 in Saw Freaks, which is what we ended up doing our official Saw later on. Yeah, exactly. I talk about message boards right here, as I'm talking about in the episode right here. Vince360, it's a shout out to one of the people on House of Jigsaw, and he's still on Reddit to this day. E. Bonneville. ST, there's a clue for you to who ST I was referencing. And I'll talk more about that later on in the episode, when we get to episode 3 about ST. And just go from there. Just little Easter eggs I can. I think I mentioned, like, names of producers or screenwriters. I think I talked about, Pete Block on one, or Jason Constantine another. Just little references to any people in the stories that wrote Saws. Of course, you all know who Pete Block is. Diehard Saw fans do. Jason Constantine, Mark Berg, Oren Koulis, Josh and Pete Stolberg, and stuff like that. I think I mentioned Stolberg Avenue in episode 1. So yeah, just like this is just me talking about people like people I met on the message board, and like how people like in the Saw message boards back in the day. It's a little love letter to them, and just a shout out to all the people back then. I'm sure people were the same way. And I guess I'll talk about this right now. One of the characters I wanted to bring into the show, I knew at the time, because originally when I first started the series, the plan was going to be do about 10 or 11 episodes, and once we got to 10 or 11 episodes, we were going to talk about the character of Corbett Denlin. And I knew eventually I was going to have to cast someone to play Corbett Denlin. We'll talk more about that later. But I knew one of the characters I wanted to bring back to the series was the character of Corbett Denlin. And like I said, that story to me, that was one of the characters I wanted to know what happened to. And what would be like if Saw was real, what would that character be like, 10 years after the events of Saw 3? And so I try to connect it to me, where that girl I'm talking about, yes, is Corbett Denlin. But how I made my mom her teacher, because try to take things that happened in my life, again, like taking this Saw was real, how this would portray, and go from there. And then talk about her and really plant the seeds as to where we were going to go with the story of the Corbett Denlin character. And we go on to, after that, talking about my buddy Mark Newton from Real Talk. Mark and I actually became good friends. Literally, the first thing I did was I watched all his Saw videos, and then I reached out to him, and literally he invited me onto his show, and literally we talked about Jigsaw for about 45 minutes. Like the first appearance of the episode was we talked about the trailer of Jigsaw. We talked about the cops of Jigsaw, and that's essentially where my love fans, because my love of Saw never went away. It was out there. There were passionate Saw fans, but once, Saw 3D, the final chapter, happened, it's like, well, Saw was a good series. It's just time to move on, find something different. And then, literally, when I found out that Jigsaw 2017 film was coming back, I got excited, because, the passion, the desire, it all came back to me. And that's essentially where I kind of got the idea of the show, going back as I talked about episode 1, it was a pandemic, and my love of Saw began back in 2017 once I figured out there was going to be another Saw movie. It kind of ignited a passion back in me. And then, same thing, I'm sitting at home watching the Saw films, and if you have that passion for anything that you want, like, don't let people tell you no. If you got the opportunity to go do it, just go do it. And thankfully, through the pandemic, my passion for this franchise grew again and helped develop this idea for the series. And as I talked about Jigsaw Rules Shutdown, this coming up right here, this is actually a link to Saw Freaks and officialsaw.com. So when you try to log back on, I know it's gone, but that's literally what you would saw back at the time. You saw right there, Saw Freaks, or it's like got shut down. The official Saw message boards got shut down. And now Mighty Bark is Mark from Real Talk, going back to that. And we'll talk to him in episode 3. All of our stuff right there. We decided to bring him aboard, and I kind of asked him, hey, do you want to, I'm kind of starting this Saw YouTube show. You want to kind of do it with me? So we both came up with the idea for episode 3, as we'll see next. But as far as my thoughts on episode 2 right here, I like this one. Like I said, it's a good established backstory because it addresses the events of the 2017 Jigsaw film. It kind of gives you more detail about who Jacob is, because if you're going to put someone in front of a camera, your audience has to literally care about that individual. And I try to give my character somewhat of a backstory. You kind of see, Jacob's not a fan of cops. Guys kind of head towards Spiral. But, it's kind of hard because, like I said, the plan was just a couple episodes and then get to the Corbett Dinley character. And then literally, I was going to make my final episode, address the events of Spiral, because I had no idea what was going to happen in Spiral at the time. I just had to make educated guesses just on what I knew from the series. And so thankfully Spiral came out a year later and didn't really affect our plans too much. But yeah, it was a gamble at the time. And I think it paid off in the grand scheme of things where we're going to go with the story. And I think it's a cool way to end the episode, setting up that, it wasn't just going to be me in front of the camera. It's going to be me interacting with somebody else. Yep, this is like me talking Saw Rules 8. That was my username. And of course I said Skype. Skype was popular 2017. Yes, I would go with Discord nowadays. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening. Check us out. Follow us on patreon.com/thejigsawblogs for early access. And I will see you all next time. Take care. The games have just begun.